Imagine a man who's seen it all, whose voice alone can hush a room, walking into a place where the world expects him to bow. Morgan Freeman, on a living legend, steps onto the stage of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert in New York City, the heart of American dreams, to talk about his new film. But what starts as a simple chat turns into a moment that'll break your heart and lift your soul. How did it all go so wrong? And why did Morgan walk away as a hero? Stick with me. This one's going to hit you hard. If you're loving this story already, smash that subscribe button to catch more real, raw moments like this. Let's dive in. The studio's buzzing, lights blazing, the crowd in Manhattan's Ed Sullivan Theater practically vibrating with excitement. Morgan Freeman, in his late 80s, is the guest everyone's waiting for. His new film, a gut-wrenching story about a father fighting to save his family's home from a ruthless bank, is all anyone's talking about. It's the kind of role that feels like it was written for him, and wise, unyielding, full of heart. His deep voice, that calm strength, it's still magic. But Morgan's not here for the glitz. He hates the fake smiles, the rehearsed banter. He's only here to share something real, something that matters. Backstage, his longtime friend and assistant Clara feels the storm coming. She's a tough woman, the kind who doesn't take nonsense, and she's been with Morgan through every battle in Hollywood. Hours ago, she pulled the producers aside, her voice low, almost a growl. "Don't mess with him. Don't make this a joke." The producers nodded, but Clara saw the glint in their eyes. They're chasing viral clips, a cheap laugh to light up social media. They want Morgan to play along, maybe poke fun at himself or do something silly for the cameras. Clara knows better. Morgan Freeman doesn't bend. Not for fame, not for anyone. In the green room, Morgan's sitting quietly, holding a cup of tea, staring at a flickering TV screen as Stephen Colbert kicks off the show. Stephen's sharp tonight, his jokes about the latest political mess landing hard with the crowd. Morgan's face doesn't move, but his fingers tap the armrest, slow, steady, like he's reading the room from a mile away. Clara catches it, that quiet sign he's bracing for a fight. "They're gonna try something stupid," she whispers to a nervous stagehand, who just shrugs. The stage manager waves. It's time. Morgan stands, adjusts his sweater, and walks toward the curtain. No fuss, no entourage. Just him. The stage is a whole different world. Stephen's riffing about some pop star's meltdown, the crowd eating it up. Then he shifts, hyping Morgan's entrance. "The voice, the legend, Morgan Freeman!" The band hits a soulful note. The crowd loses it, and Morgan steps out. His walk is slow, deliberate, like he's carrying the weight of every story he's ever told. He shakes Stephen's hand, a warm but firm grip, and sits. The cheers fade, and the air feels heavy, like the whole room's holding its breath. It's just Morgan and Stephen now. The crowd a distant hum. Stephen starts easy, asking about the film, about the father who won't give up his home. Morgan leans in, his voice like a warm fire, talking about family, about fighting for what's yours, about love that doesn't quit. Every word feels like it's coming from his soul, and the crowd's locked in, feeling the pain and hope in his story. But Stephen's got a show to run, and he's fishing for something lighter, something that'll trend. He cracks a joke about Morgan's voice, asking if he ever gets tired of narrating everyone's life. The crowd chuckles, but Morgan's smile is thin, his eyes sharp. "Only when people try to make it a gimmick," he says, his tone calm but pointed. The laughter dies fast, and Stephen misses the warning. "What do you think? Have you ever felt like someone was trying to turn your truth into a joke? Drop a comment below and let me know. I'm reading every single one." Stephen, sensing the mood shift, tries to pivot, pulling out a story about Morgan's early days. Something about a funny moment on a movie set. He's hoping for a laugh, a cozy anecdote. Morgan's eyes narrow, his jaw tight. "Never happened," he says, his voice cutting through the studio like a knife. The crowd gasps, a few nervous laughs ripple through. Stephen grins, thinking he can smooth it over, but he's wrong. He reaches for a prop, a cheap microphone, holding it up like it's a game. "Come on, Morgan, give us that famous voice. Narrate my day." The crowd claps, egging it on. But Morgan doesn't move. His stare could stop a train. "Put it away," he says, not loud, but every word heavy. The studio goes dead quiet. Clara, watching from the wings, shakes her head. This is about to get real. The silence in the Ed Sullivan Theater is thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. Morgan Freeman's words, "Put it away," still echo, his voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. Stephen Colbert, holding that cheap microphone, tries to laugh it off, but his chuckle sounds hollow, like a kid caught in a lie. The crowd's uneasy, their earlier cheers now just a low murmur. Morgan hasn't moved, his eyes locked on Stephen, steady, unblinking, like he's staring into the man's soul. The tension's so heavy you can feel it through the screen. Backstage, Clara's fists are clenched, her whisper to the stage manager like a warning shot. "Told you not to play games with him." The stage manager's sweating, waving at the control booth to cut to commercial. But the director's not pulling the plug. They're seeing dollar signs, ratings are spiking, and they're letting this fire burn. Steven shifts in his chair, trying to claw back control. Okay, no mics tonight," he says, tossing the prop onto his desk with a forced grin. The crowd lets out a nervous laugh, but it's shaky, like they're not sure what's coming next. He leans forward, his voice a little too bright, like he's trying to hit reset. "Let's get back to the film, Morgan. Tell us about this father, this fight for his home." He's hoping to steer things to safe ground, to get Morgan talking about something scripted. But Morgan's not playing that game. He leans in, his hands folded, and when he speaks, it's like the whole world stops to listen. "This film's about a man who's lost everything," Morgan says, his voice low, heavy with pain. "A man who's gotta stand up when the world's kicking him down. It's not about jokes, or lights, or applause. It's about heart." His eyes sweep the set, the cameras, the crowd, and you can feel the weight of every word. The audience is dead quiet now, hanging on his voice, some nodding, others wiping their eyes. He's not just talking about the movie. It's like he's talking about himself, about every fight he's ever faced. Steven's smile fades, his fingers tapping the desk, caught off guard by the rawness of it all. But Steven's got a show to run, and he's not ready to let Morgan take over. He tries to pivot, asking about the film's cast, tossing out a light question about working with younger actors. Morgan cuts him off, his voice sharper now, but still calm, like a blade wrapped in velvet. "You don't get it, do you?" he says, his eyes locked on Steven. "I didn't come here to be your dancing monkey. I came to talk about something real." The crowd stirs, a few gasps, some clapping, others whispering. Is this part of the show? Steven's grin is gone, his face tightening. He glances at the floor producer, who's signaling to wrap it up, but Morgan's not done. "I've been doing this longer than most of you have been breathing," Morgan says, his voice rising just enough to fill the room. "I've seen people try to turn truth into a sideshow, but I'm not here for that. I'm here for the folks watching at home, the ones who know what it's like to fight for something." The crowd's splitting now. Some are on their feet, cheering, shouting, "Preach, Morgan." Others are booing, thinking it's all for drama. Steven's scrambling, his usual quick wit nowhere to be found. He leans in, trying to play it cool. "Hey, we're just having fun here, Morgan. No need to get heavy," he says, but his voice cracks and the words fall flat. "Have you ever stood up for something real, even when everyone wanted you to play along? Tell me about it in the comments. I want to hear your stories." Backstage, the producers are freaking out. The director's yelling into headsets, "Get ready to cut." But someone higher up saying, "Let it ride." The numbers are through the roof. Clara's pacing, her eyes glued to a monitor, watching Morgan's face, that quiet strength she's seen 1,000 times. She knows he's not backing down. On stage, Steven tries one more time, switching to a safer topic, asking about Morgan's favorite role from way back. But Morgan's not biting. "You still don't hear me," he says, his voice like thunder now, but controlled. "This isn't about me, it's about respect for the work, for the people out there who need to hear the truth." The crowd roars, some standing, clapping, others shouting back, the room a mess of noise and emotion. Steven's had enough. He leans forward, dropping the nice guy act, his voice sharp. "Look, Morgan, we're just giving the fans what they want. They love you. They want to see the legend." It's the wrong move. Morgan's eyes flash and he leans in, his voice so low it's almost a whisper, but it cuts through everything. They don't want a clown. They want a man who stands for something. The words hit like a punch, and for a second, the whole studio freezes. Then someone in the back yells, "Tell him, Morgan!" And the spell breaks. Steven stands, clapping his hands, forcing a laugh. All right, folks, we'll take a quick break. The band kicks in, loud and brassy, trying to cover the chaos, but Morgan's still sitting, his eyes on Steven, like he's not done fighting. The Ed Sullivan Theater is a pressure cooker. The crowd's cheers and boos crashing like a storm as the band blares, trying to drown out the chaos. Morgan Freeman hasn't budged from his chair, his eyes still locked on Stephen Colbert, a quiet fire burning in his gaze. Stephen's standing, forcing a smile, clapping like everything's under control, but his eyes dart to the floor producer, who's waving like crazy to cut to commercial. The cameras keep rolling, though, soaking up every second of this wildfire. Morgan's words, they don't want a clown, they want a man who stands for something, hang in the air, heavy, like a truth nobody's ready to face. Backstage, Clara's watching the monitor, her heart pounding, proud but worried. She knows Morgan's fighting for more than just himself. The band's music fades and Steven sits, leaning toward Morgan, his voice low, off mic, but the front row catches bits of it. Let's just cool it, okay? We'll talk about the movie, he says, trying to save the segment. Morgan doesn't blink. You had your shot, he says, his voice steady, sharp, just loud enough for the crowd to hear. The audience stirs, phones out, recording every word, the moment already spreading like wildfire online. Steven's jaw clenches. He's not used to being called out, not here, not in his own house. He glances at the crowd, trying to read them, and decides to play to their cheers. Folks, we love Morgan, don't we? He says, raising his hands, begging for applause. Some clap, but it's weak, the room too split to unite. Morgan leans back, crossing his arms, his face calm but unyielding. He's not here to win the crowd. He's here to stand his ground. The stage manager, hovering in the wings, signals Steven to wrap it up. But Steven's not letting go. He grabs a cue card, voice bright, fake, asking about the film's director, praising Morgan's vision. But Morgan's done with the script. You're still not listening, he says, cutting Steven off mid-sentence. His voice isn't loud, but it's like a wave crashing over the set. This isn't about your show. It's about the people out there, the ones who've lost homes, who've fought banks, who've been laughed at when they tried to stand tall. The crowd gasps, some shouting, yes, others booing. The divide's sharper than ever. Steven's face flushes, his cool slipping. He's been in tough spots before, but this is Morgan Freeman tearing down his stage in front of the world. He tries to laugh, but it's strained, almost desperate. Come on, Morgan, it's just TV. We're all here to have a good time, he says, spreading his hands, pleading with the audience. Morgan shakes his head, slow, deliberate, his eyes never leaving Steven. Not me, he says. I came to talk about something that hurts, something that's real. You turned it into a game. The crowd's on fire now, some standing, clapping, chanting Morgan's name, others yelling for Steven to fight back. Clara in the wings nods, her eyes misty. She's seen Morgan take on giants, but this feels bigger, like he's speaking for everyone who's ever been silenced. What would you do if someone tried to make a joke out of your pain? Drop it in the comments. I'm dying to know how you'd handle it. Backstage, the producers are in meltdown. The director's barking orders, ready to cut, but the ratings are soaring and someone's saying, let it play. Clara's staring at Morgan on the monitor, his face like stone, but with a warmth that pulls you in. She knows he's not just fighting Steven, he's fighting a world that cheapens truth. On stage, the tension's unbearable. Steven tries one last time, voice tight, asking about Morgan's process, how he gets into a role like this father. But Morgan cuts through again. You want to know how, he says, his voice soft but piercing. You live it. You feel the weight of every door slammed in your face, every time someone tells you to smile and play along. That's how. The crowd's breathless, some wiping tears, others cheering. the room a tangle of raw emotion. Stephen's out of moves. He stands, breaking every rule of hosting, and points at Morgan, his voice loud, shaky. "You're a legend, Morgan, but this is my show, and we've got a job to do." It's a mistake. Morgan rises, slow, towering, his presence filling the stage like a quiet storm. He steps closer, his voice low, steady, but every word lands like a hammer. "Your show," he says. "I'm here because I chose to be, not to be your prop." The crowd explodes, some screaming Morgan's name, others booing Stephen, the theater shaking with their noise. Clara's in the wings, muttering, "That's my guy," her heart swelling. The director's screaming to cut, but the cameras won't stop, capturing the moment Morgan Freeman turns Stephen's stage into a battlefield for truth. The Ed Sullivan Theater is a cauldron, the crowd's roars and shouts colliding like waves in a storm. Morgan Freeman and Stephen Colbert stand face to face, inches apart, the air crackling with tension. Morgan's words, "I'm here because I chose to be, not to be your prop," still burn, each syllable a spark that set the room ablaze. Stephen's face is red, his fists tight, caught between fury and the desperate need to save his show. The cameras, defying the director's frantic screams, keep rolling, beaming this raw, unscripted moment to millions. Backstage, Clara's eyes are glued to Morgan, her expression a mix of fierce pride and fear. She knows he's fighting for something bigger than this stage. The two security guards at the stage's edge glance at each other, unsure how to handle a man like Morgan Freeman, a legend who commands respect without raising his voice. Stephen breaks first, stepping back, forcing a laugh that sounds more like a choke. "All right, Morgan, you've made your point," he says, his voice tight, trying to wrestle back control. He waves to the crowd, hoping to rally them. "Let's hear it for Morgan Freeman, folks." Some clap, but the cheers are swallowed by shouts, the room too electric to settle. Morgan doesn't blink, his stare still pinned on Stephen, like he's weighing whether to say more. The floor producer, drenched in sweat, signals security to step in, muttering, "Get him off, now." One guard moves forward, hand raised, voice careful. "Sir, let's take a walk," he says, respectful but firm. Morgan turns, his eyes locking onto the guard, and the whole set seems to freeze, the crowd holding its breath. "Don't," Morgan says, his voice low, not a threat, but a command that stops the guard cold. The man raises his hands, stepping back, knowing better than to push. Clara pushes through the wings, her voice slicing through the noise. "He leaves when he's ready," she snaps at the producer, her glare fierce enough to make the man flinch. But Morgan raises a hand, silencing her. He looks at Stephen, then the audience, his face calm but heavy with purpose. "I came here to talk about a father who fights for his family," he says, his voice steady, warm, like he's speaking to every heart in the room. "About people who get knocked down but keep standing. That's what matters, not this." He gestures at the set, the lights, the cameras, his words cutting deeper than any shout. The crowd split, some are crying, wiping their eyes, others cheering, chanting his name, while a few boo caught up in the show's chaos. Stephen's frozen, his usual charm gone, his hands gripping the desk like it's the only thing keeping him upright. He tries to speak, but Morgan's not done. "You think this is entertainment?" Morgan says, his voice soft but piercing, every word a dagger. "Making a man's life a joke? I've lived that fight. I've seen families lose everything. You don't get to laugh at that." The theater shakes with the crowd's reaction, some standing, clapping, others shouting support, the noise so loud it drowns out the band's feeble attempt to cut in. Clara's in the wings, tears in her eyes, nodding. She's seen Morgan stand tall before, but this is different, like he's carrying the pain of everyone who's ever been dismissed. What's a moment in your life when you had to stand up for what's right, no matter the kya? Share it in the comments. I'm reading everyone, and I know Morgan would too. The director's losing it in the booth, yelling to cut to commercial, but the ratings are skyrocketing and someone's saying let it run. Stephen, desperate, claps his hands, forcing a smile. "Okay, folks, we'll take a quick break," he says, his voice cracking. The band kicks in, but Morgan's still standing, his presence towering, his eyes on Stephen like a quiet challenge. The crowd's buzzing, Some chanting, Morgan, Morgan, others arguing, the theater a live wire. Security's edging closer, but they're hesitant, their hands twitching, knowing they can't touch a man like him without the world watching. Backstage, the producers are in chaos, voices raised, trying to figure out how to save the show. Steven's pacing near the desk, running a hand through his hair, muttering to himself, his confidence shattered. Morgan, calm as ever, takes a slow sip of water a stagehand brought, his eyes scanning the crowd. A woman in the front row leans forward, tears streaming, yelling, "You're my hero, Morgan." He gives her a small nod, the faintest smile, but it's enough to make her sob harder. The break's almost over, and the director's made a call. Let Morgan stay, but Steven's got to take charge. The cameras roll again, the band's final notes fading, and Steven slides into his chair, his smile fake, like a man stepping back into a fight he's already lost. But Morgan's ready for round two, and he's not here to play nice. If this story's hitting you as hard as it's hitting me, hit that subscribe button to stay with us for more moments that matter. The Ed Sullivan Theater's a powder keg. The crowd's cheers and boos roaring as Morgan Freeman stands firm, his eyes piercing Stephen Colbert. His words, "I'm here because I chose to be, not to be your prop," still burn. Stephen's crumbling, his smile fake, clapping to hide his panic. The cameras roll, capturing every second. Backstage, Clara's heart races, proud but tense, watching Morgan fight for truth. Stephen tries to pivot, asking about the film's music, but Morgan cuts through. "This world's lost in flash," he says, voice low, heavy. "People need truth, not jokes." The crowd split, some clap, others boo, but many wipe tears, feeling his pain. Stephen snaps, standing, pointing. "This is my show, Morgan." Morgan rises, towering, his voice steady. Respect's earned, not bought. The theater shakes, fans screaming his name, some crying. Clara's eyes glisten. She knows he's speaking for the silenced. The director yells to cut, but the cameras keep going, the moment too big to stop. Stephen signals a break, but Morgan's presence owns the stage, his fight far from over. What's a time you stood up for what's right? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every one. The theater's electric. Morgan Freeman's words, respect's earned, fueling a firestorm of cheers and sobs. Stephen's sinking, his voice weak, trying to rally the crowd, but Morgan's their hero now. He steps closer to them, voice soft, powerful. "This film's for the folks who fight, who lose everything but keep going," he says. The crowd's crying, clapping, a woman sobbing, "You're our voice." Clara's in the wings, tears falling, knowing Morgan's carrying their pain. Stephen tries to interrupt, but Morgan shuts him down. "It's about the people out there, not your show," he says, his voice a thunderclap. The theater erupts, fans on their feet chanting his name. The director's frantic, but ratings soar, so the cameras roll. Stephen's defeated, muttering for a break. Security's near, but they won't touch Morgan. Clara snaps. He leaves when he's ready. Morgan looks at the crowd, his eyes warm. "I said what I came to say." The room holds its breath, waiting for his next move. Have you ever felt someone speak your truth? Share it in the comments. I want to hear it. The Ed Sullivan Theater's alive. Morgan Freeman's final words, "I said what I came to say," echoing as the crowd roars, some sobbing, others chanting his name. Stephen's broken, silent, his show lost to Morgan's truth. The cameras capture it all, the moment spreading online. Morgan faces the crowd, voice steady. "You're the ones who keep fighting. Don't let anyone steal your story." Fans cry, reach out, shouting, "You're our hero." Clara's in the wings, tears streaming, grabbing his arm as he walks off, calm, unshaken. "You did it," she whispers. He nods, stepping into the New York night, leaving a world changed. The show limps on, Stephen's charm gone, Morgan's stand the only story that matters. A legend drew a line, and someone out there standing taller because of it. Subscribe for more stories that hit the heart.